After another tough day at work, this guy was so tired that he didn't even notice the signal while crossing the street, and with that, his life on Earth came to an end, and he was reborn in another world where magic exists. However, even as a baby, his father's carriage was attacked by a demon, and a man named Merlin found the little one who was named Shin and raised in the forest by him. His adopted grandfather also taught magic and hunting to Shin, who, despite not remembering his death, had memories of his past life, including the fact that there was no magic in the world he came from. Furthermore, Shin grew up receiving visits from Merlin's friends whom he considered his family, such as Michael and Melita. Melita found it too dangerous for Merlin to allow a child to hunt animals like wild boars. But as soon as Shin turned 10 years old, Merlin decided to take his grandson demon hunting, something a bit more dangerous than a simple wild boar. In this world, everyone could harness the benefits of magical forces, but those who couldn't control magic became violent and turned into demons, which applied to all creatures, including humans. His grandfather explained this to Shin and said that before they hunted a demon, they needed to locate one. So he taught Shin a searching magic to learn how to locate all creatures around him, and the boy succeeded on his first try, sensing the magic of the creatures in the forest, even Melita, who was peacefully reading a book in her house. But as he continued to analyze the magic around him, Shin felt a strange sensation coming from a demon's power and got excited about the idea of protecting the place, just as his grandfather had protected a country from a demon in his past. So when he encountered the creature, he didn't think twice and advanced, casting a spell that defeated the red-brown demon, making his grandfather proud despite almost having a heart attack out of concern for his grandson's safety. At night, Merlin tells everyone about Shin's first hunt, and they are impressed by how quickly the boy can learn magic and the fact that he is already at the same level as Michael. Moreover, they know that Shin came from another world, although they don't pay much attention to it because what really mattered was that both Merlin and Melita considered Shin their grandson. The same went for the boy, who, despite not having known his parents and not knowing anything about where he came from, was very grateful to have Merlin and his friends as his family. But years later, Shin celebrates his 15th birthday with his adoptive family, and now as a young adult, everyone wants to know what he wants for his future, including his uncle Dis. But despite the young man being a prodigy in magic and a skilled fighter, Shin realizes that he has never left the forest and doesn't really know his options. So at the celebration, Shin discovers that there is a demon hunter society he could join, as well as the royal order for his combat skills, or he could become a simple artifact merchant. However, since his grandfather focused so much on teaching him magic and forgot to teach him practical things about the world, this would make things a bit challenging. Everyone questions how Merlin educated Shin, and to illustrate his reasons, he takes all of his friends to a secluded location in the forest using the boy's teleportation magic and asks him to demonstrate his power. Shin then visualizes the necessary elements and how the magic works without incantations, relying solely on concentration. As a dedicated chemistry student in his past life, Shin could visualize chemical elements well, explaining the powerful magic he could perform, which was nothing more than science. However, since the people in that world didn't seem to know much about chemistry, everyone is amazed at the power that Shin demonstrates. But such power and ability could cause problems for him or create conflict and power imbalances, since everyone would want to take advantage of his capability. To make matters worse, he knew nothing about the world outside the forest. So Uncle Diz suggests that he enroll in the magic school, an educational institution located in the capital for exceptional magic students in elementary school, which would be good for Shin, since he had never interacted with people his age. However, with this simple meeting, Shin discovers that not only did he know nothing about the world, but he also didn't know much about his own family, such as the fact that his uncle was the king of the kingdom, and the two young people he considered as siblings were part of the uncle's escort, with the girl, Chris, being in the royal guard and Seed being a court mage. In addition to not knowing that he had a royal relative, he discovers that he didn't even know much about Michael, who reveals that he was once a commander knight. But as the revelation about his uncle was more shocking, he asks why a king would visit his grandfather, and Uncle Dis explains that the country Merlin saved from the demon was exactly their country. He recounts that at the time, 2 entire squadrons were eliminated and his city disappeared from the map because of the demon. At that time, he was at the Magic Academy and was part of the 3rd Squadron. But just when he was about to be attacked by the demon, Merlin, along with Melita, protected him and vanquished the demon through teamwork. Since then, the two were considered national heroes, and the couple, who were married at the time, became friends with Diz. After so many revelations, Shin decides to follow his uncle's advice and goes to the capital to study at the magic school. His grandparents accompany him, making everyone excited about the arrival of the national heroes in the city. During their stay arranged by Dis, the three are received by various staff members, including a butler, housekeeper, and even a chef. After all, the guy's uncle was the king of the place. Apart from the VIP treatment, Shin goes shopping for the first time in his life and takes a stroll around the city, finally getting to know a place outside the forests. However, on the tour, he gets lost and ends up encountering a group of guys who are bothering a young lady. The guys thought highly of themselves because they were demon hunters, but Shin sets them straight and tells them that protecting the city doesn't give them the right to harass the young woman. They become furious with Shin, but the boy deals with them using his combat skills and the lady thanks him. Shortly after, a friend of the girl appears and Shin is enchanted by her cuteness. The two girls have a snack with Shin to thank him for his help, and there they introduce themselves as Maria and Sicilian. He discovers that the two will also be taking the entrance exam for the magic school next month, which means the three of them will be studying together. In addition, just like everyone else in the city, Maria was excited about the arrival of the national heroes and even mentioned that she was looking forward to meeting their grandson, knowing that he was also going to attend the magic school. This makes Shin a bit uncomfortable, so he decides to leave and bids farewell to the girls, without mentioning that he was indeed the grandson of the national heroes everyone was talking about. As soon as he leaves, it becomes apparent that the young man has captured Sicilian's heart. And so on the day of the school entrance exam, Shin arrives at the location excited to take the test, but ends up meeting a future classmate named Kurt, who was quite arrogant and thought highly of himself because he was the heir account. However, despite his title, Shin treats him like any other person, which only makes Kurt even more irritated. But using authority within the school was prohibited by law, and Prince August, seeing Kurt's behavior, reminds him that disrespecting the law is the same as disrespecting royalty, something worthy of punishment. This obviously puts Kurt in his place, and as he leaves, August introduces himself to Shin, who is excited to meet his uncle Dis's son, seeing the prince as his cousin, completely ignoring the fact that he is of royal blood and treating him like an ordinary person. This makes August happy because he knows that sooner or later, everyone at school will start to flatter him, and it's good to have someone who sees him only as a cousin. They quickly strike up a friendship, and at that moment, Maria and Sicilian arrive at the school and are confused to see Shin talking to the prince so intimately. Later, they take the written test and proceed to the practical test, where the teacher asks everyone to demonstrate the best spell they can cast. Shin is excited to see the spells of his future classmates, but ends up being quite disappointed because everyone casts very simple spells and acts as if they are doing great, only changing the elements used, with one using fire, another water, another air, and another earth. But apart from that, all the demonstrations leave Shin horrified at how unimpressive they are. When it's his turn, the teacher asks him to control himself because she was warned by the king about his power. However, even while controlling himself, Shin causes a huge explosion in the room, leaving everyone amazed by his ability. With the end of the test, the admission scores are announced, and of course, Shin obtains the best result, prompting the school to ask him to give a speech to the freshmen at the ceremony. He questions why Prince August doesn't give the speech, since he is the prince. But his cousin explains that in the school, positions are determined solely by merit and classes don't exist there. He also enjoys the fact that Shin has to give the speech to everyone. However, Kurt, who continued to believe that nobles should have advantages because of their titles, didn't like the merit given to Shin. Meanwhile, Kurt was quite relaxed, removing the defensive magic that came with his uniform and replacing it with his own, which was much stronger and more useful than the school's spell, even scaring his grandmother with the level of his power. On the day of the ceremony, in addition to the king, nobility, and Shin's grandparents, Maria and Sicilian, were also present to welcome the freshmen and hear Shin's speech. There he learns that Maria and Sicilian are also part of the nobility, while they finally discover that he is the grandson of the national heroes. After his speech, the two girls ask for Shin's help. They explain that a boy had been bothering Sicilian, using his family's power to threaten her, even though she had made it clear that she wasn't interested in him. And that boy happened to be Kurt, the troublesome boy who arrived with jealousy when Sicilian talked to Shin, acting as if she were committed to him. The girl becomes nervous, but Shin assures her that he will protect her, giving Sicilian the strength to face Kurt and tell him that she had rejected his engagement proposal and wouldn't take orders from him. This only prompts Kurt to use his family's power once again to force her to accept his proposal. However, August witnesses it all and puts an end to the situation, reminding Kurt that his actions were an affront to royalty. August takes the opportunity to tease his cousin about how he promised to protect Sicilian, which leaves both of them embarrassed. Even though the immediate problem had been resolved, it wasn't guaranteed that Kurt would leave her alone. So Shin decides to take his friends to his house, along with two of August's guards who accompany him everywhere. Everyone is excited to meet the national heroes, and Shin explains to his grandparents the situation with Sicilian. He plans to cast his protection spell on her uniform, just as he did with his own. However, his grandmother, Melita, explains that the magic Shin put on his uniform turned it into a high-level artifact of considerable value. Melita then asks if Cecilian is worthy of receiving something so valuable, but the girl feels guilty and starts to cry, saying that she isn't worthy and apologizing for wanting to take advantage of Shin's goodwill. However, Melita tells her that this makes her worthy because she understood the value of what she would receive and showed honesty. So Shin casts the protection spell on Cecilian's uniform, and King Dis, who was also present, realizes the value of that magic. He asks Shin to keep it a secret because if the information leaked, it could lead to the army's interest in the spell and possibly declare war. He realizes that he can't keep using the magic and regrets not putting it on August's uniform, but he makes an exception for his son's safety, saying it's okay if Shin uses the magic in moderation. In the end, at the conclusion of the meeting, Shin ends up placing the spell on all the uniforms, even on August's guards, except for Maria, who didn't want to carry a state secret with her. Cecilian thanks him for his help, but Shin says that to ensure her safety, he will accompany her home every day to prevent anyone from bothering her. She asks if it won't be too much trouble, but Shin explains that it will be easy for him thanks to his portal. He then gives a small demonstration by taking the whole group to his forest home in seconds, explaining that unlike a teleportation spell, his portal only connects 2 places, allowing him to create portals to any place he has been to. As promised, Shin starts picking up Cecilian from her house through the portal to ensure her safety, and their relationship continues to grow. Maria ends up feeling like a third wheel, and August can't resist teasing his cousin about arriving at school with 2 girls on the first day. After class, the teacher shows them around the school and explains that it is divided into 2 buildings, one for classes and the other for offices, laboratories, and study group rooms with several groups they could join. One of August's guards is interested in joining one of the groups but thinks he can't because he has to stay close to the prince. However, August reminds him that he has no authority as royalty at the school and doesn't need guards there. Shin realizes that August's motive for letting the guard go is to get some space and be free of the escort. Then a girl from their class asks if Shin is interested in joining any of the groups, but he declines. August assumes that none of the groups would be challenging for someone as powerful as Shin and suggests that he start his own study group. Shin hesitates, but all his classmates are interested in joining a group led by him. Even the teacher expresses interest in being the group's advisor. They get so excited that they start talking as if Shin had already agreed, but he says he hasn't decided on the study topic yet. Someone suggests he could talk about his grandparents, but to Shin's surprise, a teacher says there's already a study group about the 2 national heroes. Then the girls suggest they study all kinds of magic inspired by Shin, and that becomes the theme of their new study group. At night, King Dis holds a meeting with important people from the kingdom to discuss the increase in demons, which although small was enough to warrant an investigation into the cause. Dis sends one of them named Dominic to join the Demon Hunt Society. Meanwhile, Kurt's father discovers how his son has been misbehaving at school using his position. He scolds Kurt, but Kurt complains that it's not right to be treated like a commoner. He starts ranting bizarrely about how nobody sees how special he is and how it all started with Shin's arrival. His father realizes that his son's acting strangely and gives him a slap and orders him to be locked in his room to calm down. The next day, everyone finds out that Kurt is grounded, and Shin asks if he has always been this complicated. His cousin explains that while he was always a bit arrogant, he used to be a normal student. His escort adds that he changed after he started visiting Mr. Stretchrum's lab. August explains that Mr. Strum was exiled from the Empire and invited anyone reasonably skilled in magic to visit his lab. They found it strange and didn't go with Kurt, even though he appeared blind as he acted as if he could see through some magic. Meanwhile, at Kurt's house, his mother, worried about her son, turns to Mr. Strum for help in bringing him back to his senses. However, Mr. Strum only reinforces how special Kurt is and how he can have anything he wants. Kurt then mentions how he couldn't win the girl he wanted because of Shin, and Mr. Strum instructs him to eliminate that obstacle, while casting a spell that was clearly responsible for his deteriorating behavior. Back at school in the cafeteria, August asks if Shin will stop accompanying Cecilian now that Kurt is grounded and can't bother her anymore. This makes the girl sad, but Shin says he doesn't see any problem with accompanying her for no reason since their homes are close. This makes her very excited. Despite both clearly liking each other, August comments that it's good for them to return to school together because the 2 girls might attract other troublesome guys. Shin explains that if they are in danger, his tracking magic will detect it, and the other students mention not being able to use tracking magic. Shin then asks if any of them have ever hunted a demon, and they all find it strange because they're still in high school. He explains that demon magic is dark and abnormal, which can set them apart just like regular people. He mentions that he hunted a demon when he was 10 years old and starts to describe it, leaving everyone astonished once again by his incredible abilities. Later, the students discuss the study group, and Shin senses a demonic presence. He looks in the direction of the magic and sees Kurt, who is clearly out of his mind. Kurt attacks them with a fire spell, and Shin blocks it with a protective spell, asking August and Cecilian to channel their uniforms. They help Shin block the attacks, but he ends up getting burned a little, which worries Cecilian. However, his regeneration quickly heals him. Consumed by hatred, Kurt's transformation intensifies, turning him into a Demonoid. With the situation becoming increasingly dangerous, Shin tells everyone to leave immediately. August wants to help, but since none of them have ever hunted a demon before, Shin says they would only get in the way. Once everyone leaves, Shin starts battling Kurt, who begins to speak, surprising Shin as he thought demons had completely lost their sanity. Shin decides to control his magic to see if it's possible to save Kurt, but Kurt starts gathering so much magic, enough to cause an explosion that would destroy the school. Shin is forced to defeat him with a single blow to protect everyone's safety. Even though he had killed other demons before and knew he did the right thing, Shin starts to feel guilty. After all, the other demons he faced were not human, let alone a fellow student. Then all his friends appear, amazed by how well Shin fought, although they also lament what happened to Kurt. August explains that what just happened will undoubtedly shake the entire kingdom, as it was the second Demonoid appearance in history. His soldiers then show up, concerned about everyone's safety, but August explains that Shin, the grandson of the national heroes, had already defeated the demon, causing them to call Shin the new hero. After that, while Mr. Strum celebrates the success of his experiment with Kurt, Shin and his classmates wonder how he transformed into a Demonoid since the only one before him transformed due to an advanced demonized spell, and Kurt didn't know much about magic, making Shin think that someone might have used him as a guinea pig. Later, Shin arrives home and finds his uncle Dis waiting for him to announce that he will receive a hero's medal for defeating the Demonoid. Merlin questions Dis because before they went to the city, he promised not to use Shin for political purposes. But Dis explains that when the first Demonoid appeared in the kingdom, it was at risk of being exterminated, and since the news spread that it almost happened again and that thanks to Shin, everyone was safe as the king, he couldn't help but reward the new hero and promises to do everything to protect Shin from opportunists. Merlin accepts the terms but makes it clear that if anything changes, they will leave the kingdom. And so everyone talks about the new hero, Shin, who defeated a Demonoid, and at school, all the students wanted to join his study group, prompting the teacher to set a knowledge requirement for joining the group since he couldn't accept all of them. So Shin receives 2 new members in his study group, Mark and Olivia, who met the teacher's requirements. And since Mark is the son of a blacksmith, Shin asks him to forge a new weapon for him. Of course, Shin had informed Diz about his suspicions that someone had experimented on Kurt, and the king asks Dominic and the head of security, Dennis, to investigate thoroughly. This leads his men to interrogate Mr. Strum, who visited Kurt on the day he demonized. As soon as they arrive, they find it strange that the professor can see despite having his eyes covered, and he explains that he cast a spell to continue seeing and reveals that he was born into a noble family in the Empire but lost his eyes in a family fight and was exiled from the kingdom. Then the investigators start the conversation that really matters, beginning by saying that they knew he was the teacher of very talented magic students, and Mr. Struttrum ends up lamenting the incident that happened with his student Kurt. So the two pretend they're seeking a magic expert like him to examine the demonized body. And so while Mr. Strum accompanies the two to the place where he believes the body is, Shin talks to Mark about liking swords with thinner blades, and one of his friends suggests that he have a sword with replaceable blades to use the hilt multiple times, making it more cost-effective. Mark likes the idea so much that he asks Shin to visit his father's workshop after school, and everyone in the group wants to go along. Later, when Mr. Struttrum finally arrives at the location, he realizes he wasn't there to examine bodies, and the investigator explains that he got caught up in their earlier conversation because right after the incident with Kurt, the king issued an order to keep the person who had been demonized confidential to avoid tarnishing the family name, and yet, he knew that the new Demonoid was Kurt. Instead of being frightened for being caught, he gives a classic villainous laugh and confesses that he did indeed experiment on Kurt. So just when the study group was walking peacefully to Mark's house, they come across an explosion caused by Strum, who had just hit the man who had interrogated him. Shin soon discovers that he was responsible for Kurt's sad fate and attacks the professor in anger. The two exchange blows of powerful magic, but despite all of Shin's power, Strum manages to defend himself, and at that moment, Struttrum's mask breaks, revealing his red demon eyes. In other words, he was a Demonoid with intelligence who now saw humans as mere insignificant creatures. Shin then decides that he must stop him at all costs before something worse happens and sets a trap that catches him off guard with a sunbeam spell that causes a mega explosion, defeating the Demonoid and turning him into dust while the ground turns to glass from the heat. Everyone celebrates the victory, and Dominic and the captain of the court's magic division, Olgran, congratulate the young hero who has just protected the kingdom from another Demonoid. However, Shin had only focused the sunlight into a heat ray and is puzzled by the fact that the ray generated an explosion, making him wonder if he had actually hit Strum. And Shin was right to suspect, because although he was injured, the Demonoid was still alive and had indeed released the explosion spell to escape without anyone noticing. However, he had now seen Shin's power up close and admitted that if he had taken a little more damage, it would have been his end, prompting him to take action to ensure that Shin does not interfere in his plans again. The group continues with their normal lives, and Melita becomes curious about her grandson's love life, and Maria explains that although it's clear that Shin and Sicilian are in love with each other, Sicilian doesn't know how to act because he is her first love. Later, the whole group goes to Mark's workshop, and while they have fun, Shin is still thinking about whether he really defeated Strum. He shares his concern with August, explaining that after that day he repeated the same heat spell he used to attack Strum, but it only created craters, not explosions like that day. So August suggests that he can ask Mark's father for anything he wants, and the royal family will cover the expenses since Shin is the only one capable of facing the Demonoids. And thus, as Shin hands over the weapons he wants to the blacksmith, we see that outside the kingdom, in the Blustia Empire, a man named Zest provides information about the kingdom's situation to the Empire, which wishes to take advantage of the kingdom's demon problems to launch an attack. After speaking with the blacksmith, Shin asks Mark what else they sell, and he explains that they sell household items and accessories. Shin thinks about buying something for Sicilian, which makes the girl all dreamy, but Shin only wants to give her an accessory enchanted with a protection spell, making Sicilian feel as if she had been missiled. But even though Shin's motives aren't exactly romantic, she becomes very happy with the ring he chose for her, and there's a romantic atmosphere between them. Afterward, the day of the award ceremony finally arrives, and Shin is applauded by everyone for saving the kingdom from the Demonoid. He receives a medal and is named the new national hero, and just as his uncle Dis promised Merlin, he announces to everyone present that Shin should not be used for political or military gain. However, the king's announcement doesn't stop Shin from having fans, and the very next day, his house is swarmed with admirers of the new hero, forcing him to use his portal to reach school in peace. This catches the new members of his study group off guard, as they didn't yet know about the portal magic. Shin tries to explain how it works, but no one understands, and he tells them not to feel bad because even his grandfather, a national hero, couldn't understand how that magic worked. Then Shin has the idea of having everyone in the study group level up so they are better prepared when an incident occurs. He asks everyone to improve the magic they already know, whether it's for defense or attack. He asked everyone to start by testing how much magic power they can control, and his classmates are confused because they thought they needed more elaborate spells to improve. Shin explains what really matters, but no one understands his explanation. So Shin asks Maria to perform a barrier spell, a simple spell that everyone knows how to do. However, Shin analyzes it and says it's too thin to repel any attack. He asks Sicilian to activate the barrier spell he put on her ring, and everyone is amazed to see a powerful double-layered barrier that's much stronger than Maria's, even though it's the same spell. He then reminds his friends that in his fight against Strum, he blocked the first attack using a barrier spell. Everyone is surprised because they thought he had used a more elaborate spell than a simple barrier. So Shin gives a demonstration of his own magic control power, making everyone scared to see such immense power up close. After making it clear about the importance of magic control, Shin says they will train this control every day during the study group's time. Back in the Blustia Empire, we discover that it was precisely there that Strum was recovering from the injuries he received in the fight against Shin, and that it was he who sent the informant Zest to suggest that the Empire declare war on the kingdom. He discusses this with his maid Miria, and seems excited for his plan to come into action. At the end of the school day, Shin returns home with his friends using the portal once again due to his fans who were everywhere. Everyone is excited to start learning Shin's teachings, as he was trained by the national hero Merlin. However, his grandfather says that although he taught magic to Shin, he always had his own vision, focusing on visualizing the process of magic rather than the result, raising questions like what fire is and why it burns instead of simply visualizing fire, allowing him to create entirely new and powerful visualizations like the portal. So he shows everyone that Shin's method works, and despite being difficult, he managed to create the portal thanks to a step-by-step description Shin gave him, teaching his classmates that it is indeed possible to do everything Shin can by understanding his methods. Later, Melita talks to Merlin and says she understands that he made an effort to learn the portal so that Shin wouldn't be called abnormal, because no one else knows how to do his magic, showing that it was indeed possible to perform them, and it also motivated her friends to make an effort. Later on, Shin returns to see Mark's father, who proves to be a professional by quickly completing his innovative order for a sword with replaceable blades. To take advantage of his visit, Shin buys accessories for all the girls in the group so that they can also have a protective magic, which leaves Sicilian slightly jealous. Next, August thinks that the kingdom's army could make use of this new type of weapon, as it would help in manufacturing low-cost weapons since they would likely soon have to face a difficult war against the Blussia Empire, which was seeking to attack them without reason. Everyone becomes concerned, but August reassures them, saying that despite the possibility of the war dragging on and needing their assistance, it hadn't even started yet. But he reminds them that, as agreed upon, Shin would stay out of it, as his father had promised not to involve him in military matters. However, Shin makes it clear that if necessary, he will willingly enter the battlefield to protect his dear friends. Meanwhile, it is revealed that King Dis informs that the Empire was already advancing on the kingdom and orders the withdrawal of the forces to minimize the impact of the impending war. However, shortly after, Blusvia's troops retreat and Emperor Harold wonders why the kingdom managed to send troops to the border since, according to the informant, they were not capable of defending themselves due to problems with demons. Realizing he was deceived, he swears to seek vengeance against Zes for providing false information to him. Subsequently, some terrified soldiers appear, reporting that the area was full of demons, and Emperor Harold orders his troops to withdraw immediately. Meanwhile, at the kingdom's army camp, they wonder why the Empire is already retreating when one of their men appears, telling them that they were attacked by demons. Meanwhile, the creatures attack everyone in their path, destroying everything in their wake, and it's revealed that Shrum was behind the attack. Furthermore, he had transformed his servant Miria into a Demonoid, and his plans had only just begun. Days later at the Imperial Castle, Harold instructs his men to deal with the demons when Shrum appears and ruthlessly eliminates the Emperor. 3 days later, the kingdom's army goes to the location where the troops were attacked to investigate. There, they finally discover that the Demonoid survived the battle with Shin, and that he was responsible for instigating the war. To make matters worse, Shrum had turned all the people attacked by his demons into Demonoids, forming an army of over a dozen. Fortunately, the army manages to retreat safely back to the kingdom and report their findings and the dangers ahead. King Dis considers what to do next. Later, the magic school professor informs the students that due to the demon threat, they will strengthen their combat forces, and for this purpose, they have decided to improve the students who will train alongside the knight training school to learn to work together, combining the strengths of mages and knights. The problem is that the students of the magic school don't get along with the knights. One side focuses on physical improvement while the other ignores it entirely to focus on spells. They mockingly call the magic school students sprouts while referring to the knights as muscleheads. Needless to say, nobody liked the idea of this partnership. Furthermore, two of Shin's classmates, Tony and Julius, come from knight families, making it even more challenging for them, as they had previously sided with the knight school and made fun of the magic school students. However, Maria, who has always been a mage, says that they are much stronger in combat than the knights. Shin tries to calm her down and says that they complement each other. He, for example, can wield both magic and a sword, understanding the importance of both sides. Sicilian asks if he was trained by a knight, and Shin reveals that he was trained by Michael, astonishing everyone, because he learned magic and item enchantment from two national heroes and sword fighting from the swordsman and former commander Michael, known as the best with the sword, although for Shin, he was just a demanding teacher. They speculate that the night school students will envy Shin for being trained by Michael, but for him, that doesn't matter because what's important is to make the most of the joint training. Unfortunately, his class still has no intention of giving this partnership a chance. Later, they gather for training and are divided into teams of 8, with 4 mages and 4 knights for a demon hunt in the forest. The knights are not happy about being forced to work together because in their minds, the mages will only get in the way. But Shin is focused on learning to work together. And since he knows none of his classmates have faced demons before, he asks the knights if their experience was different. However, the group interprets his question as bragging about defeating a Demonoid. He tries to explain that he just wants to know about their experience since they are about to face demons, and even says that if they continue dividing the group like this, they will die. Still, this doesn't change their attitude. August intervenes and suggests that if they think mages will only be a hindrance, they should face a demon without mage support to understand the purpose of the joint training. Due to August's status as a prince, everyone agrees. The group arrives at the location for the hunt, where there is a high probability of encountering a strong demon. There, they meet the group's guides, who happen to be the brothers Chris and Sieg. As they are responsible for the king's security, they are popular in both schools, and everyone begins to flatter them. The hunt begins, and they inform the guides that the knights will face the demons alone because they don't understand the purpose of the exercise. Chris says they will soon realize their mistake, which will prevent future problems. August mentions that he's not sure if Maria has understood the purpose yet, But she acknowledges that having seen Shin face a Demonoid, she knows she couldn't face a demon without a knight's help. Sieg says recognizing their weaknesses is good because it will make her stronger, leaving the girl infatuated with the court mage's words. The group continues the hunt, with the knights tense as it's their first time. Shin senses a demon approaching and Sieg also senses it, warning the knights to prepare for a fight. A demon boar appears and Shin even thinks it would be delicious to eat if it weren't a demon. The knights decide to show off their abilities, but they end up being defeated by the boar. Seeing that they are unable to defeat the creature, Shin steps in and dispatches the demon with a single blow, leaving the knights impressed by his skill. Chris scolds the knights for boasting about being the best in the school but getting beaten by such a weak and small demon. Sicilian uses restoration magic to heal their injuries, making the knights feel ashamed for underestimating the mages. They are still enchanted by Sicilian's beauty and become overly kind to her, which makes Shin quite jealous. However, he's not the only one. Maria and Miranda, the girl from the night school, are also envious of the special treatment Sicilian is receiving. Sieg interrupts them to inform them that another demon is approaching. Shin uses his search magic to locate it and sees not just one but several demons heading their way. Two students appear, running from the demons, and tell them to run because at least 100 demons are approaching. Shin asks to handle the situation alone and everyone becomes worried. But Sieg knows his brother can handle it easily. They all move back, giving Shin the space to unleash his full power. As the demons approach, they realize it's a demonized herd running from a demonized tiger. However, Shin casts a spell that hits all of them, defeating the 100 demonized animals at once, leaving the knights astonished by this new hero's strength. Miranda apologizes to Shin for trying to belittle him and admits that deep down she was envious of him being on a level far above hers. She also apologizes to Sicilian for insulting her boyfriend, making both of them blush. It was clear that they like each other, and all that was left was for them to officially become a couple. After that, the group continues their journey, encountering a demonized bear. But this time, they work excellently as a team, alternating between magic attacks and sword strikes, which makes their guides quite proud. Sieg, in particular, asks Shin how they are so good, even better than those at the court. Shin explains that they train together in a magic study group, where he teaches things like his spell visualization techniques. Sieg gets excited and asks to learn from Shin as well. However, August, who overhears the conversation, warns that as a military man, he might expose Shin's powers, which could cause trouble if they were to venture into neighboring lands. So for safety reasons, he asks Shin not to reveal his magical talents. However, as Sieg is very interested and trustworthy, August briefly explains Shin's methods, which essentially involve practicing magical control. It's so simple that Sieg suspects August is leaving something out, so August asks the girls to project their magical barriers, and Sieg is amazed at their resilience. Maria mentions that they are still thinner than Shin's barrier, and that they have much more to learn, but Sieg is already impressed with their abilities, leaving Maria smitten once again. Meanwhile, we see another part of Shin's friends in a different group, and one of the knights named Giulio doesn't get along with Tony, who comes from a family of knights and has known Giulio since high school. Just like in Shin's group, the knights in that team also want to advance without working together with the magic school students, ignoring the purpose of the exercise. However, they also face difficulties and are saved by the mages. But Giulio continues to be irritated with Tony, and his friends speculate there must be a reason for his anger. After some reflection, Tony remembers that he went out with a girl Giulio liked. He tries to downplay it, but it's clear to everyone that this is the source of Giulio's fury. Meanwhile, in another group, we see that the knights were not much different from Shin's and Tony's teams, as they also had a sense of superiority and had to rely on the magic students, who were overly flashy with their powerful spells. At the end of the day, they all reunite at the meeting point and briefly share their experiences. Despite the difficulties with the knights, everyone managed to successfully face the demons. However, Maria takes the opportunity to tease her friends by saying that Shin and Sicilian were glued to each other the whole time, making the couple embarrassed once again. But Shin is feeling a bit down and his friends ask why. August takes this moment to explain that everyone in Shin's study group except Shin himself will be supervised because of their strength, and for the same reason, they will become part of a special unit after graduating. Shin feels responsible for changing the course of his friends' lives, but they all see this as good news as it means they have a secure future. As a result, they ask Shin to teach them more to become even stronger and better prepared for their future role in the special unit. Several days pass, and we see that the study group now trains their magic in a remote location away from civilization for safety reasons, as they cannot be seen. They all become much stronger, evolving and improving their magical abilities. After their training, August updates everyone on the situation with the Demonoids, which is being kept secret from the general population to avoid panic. However, they need to be informed, since they will play a crucial role in the battle against the Demonoids. He reveals that Demonoids are attacking everything, causing catastrophic damage to the city and many lives lost. To make matters worse, each attack increases the number of Demonoids as they are demonizing their victims. Shin wonders about Shrimp's plans, as it only takes one Demonoid to disrupt an entire nation. Realizing the impending danger, Shin decides to use the school break to take the group on a training camp, which excites everyone. Since the nobles have their own lands, they jointly analyze which location would be ideal for their training and settle on Sizzilian's house, which has thermal springs. However, when Shin shares the plan with his grandparents, Melita is concerned about what the young people might get up to without adult supervision. So she decides to accompany them to keep a close eye on them, and Merlin eagerly joins her. Everyone embarks on a trip to Sizzilian's house, and along the way, Shin learns more about his grandmother, Melita, who changed the way mages use enchanted items. These items used to be solely for combat, but now they have practical everyday uses, improving people's lives. As a sign of respect, she is now called the Guru. During their journey, the group encounters some demons. However, now that they are stronger and better prepared, everyone is eager to defeat the demons. They decide by drawing straws who will have the privilege of putting their training into practice, and Lin wins. She faces the demons and easily defeats them with her spell, leaving the bystanders astonished at how a young child could defeat so many medium-sized demons in such a short time. This also makes Shin's grandparents proud to see the team's progress. After this long journey, they finally arrive in the city of Claude, where Sizzilian's house is located. The family's servants welcome the visitors and ask Shin to make their mistress happy, indicating that they already know about the couple. Later, the group decides to take a relaxing bath, and in the men's bathroom, Merlin expresses his gratitude for his grandson having found such good friends. Shin had never had friends his age before, and August points out that he should be the one thanking Shin, since he was the first friend to treat him informally while Shin treated him simply as a cousin. They all begin to express their gratitude for having Shin as their friend, and Shin takes the opportunity to thank his grandfather for raising him and making him the person he is today. Someone with many friends thanks to him, which deeply moves the old man. In the women's bathroom, Melita also thanks the girls for being Shin's friends, and they, in turn, express their gratitude for Shin's friendship and the many things he taught them. Melita decides that she and Merlin will also help train them during the camp. Shin and his grandparents then train the study group during the camp, and everyone makes much more progress than expected. However, Shin knows they need to improve even further to face the impending danger. He realizes that he too needs to evolve, which makes his colleagues somewhat fearful, considering the immense power he already possesses. For safety, they create a protective barrier so Shin can train, and he demonstrates an extraordinarily powerful ability that terrifies everyone at the thought of being hit by such power. Fortunately, Shin only destroys the intended target, showing his control over the situation. Afterward, they return to Sizzilian's mansion, and August seizes the opportunity to ask Shin to take him to the castles, since it's difficult for them to receive updates on the Demonoid situation at the camp. However, upon arriving at the castle through the portal, August is confronted by his fiancée Ellie and his younger sister May, both angry with him for going to the camp without them, especially May, who is a big fan of Melita. The two insist on going to the camp with them, and August initially tries to refuse, but his father insists that he take them since Shin's grandparents are there as chaperones, and it's easy for him to transport them through Shin's portal. So August has no choice but to bring them along to Sizzilian City. Ellie, however, is mainly there to keep an eye on August due to jealousy, thinking that he might be interested in other girls at the camp. She's especially worried about the time he spent with Shin at the restaurant, but August reassures her that he values their relationship. During their stay, they go to a restaurant where August accidentally reveals that Shin also has a girl. Shin tries to deny it and says he can't know if Sizzilian feels the same way, but August encourages him not to wait for her to confess and to take the opportunity to share his feelings. This makes Shin contemplate his actions. When they return to Sizzilian's house, Shin feels awkward, and to make matters worse, Ellie and May mistakenly believe that Sizzilian is the girl August and Shin were talking about in the restaurant. They discuss it loudly, embarrassing Shin even more. Later, they introduce themselves to the group, and May is excited to finally meet Melita, asking to hold her idol's hand, which prompts Melita to comment that her own grandson never asks for such things. The group starts talking about how difficult it must have been for Melita to raise someone as powerful as Shin, which makes Shin feel a bit uncomfortable. Sizzilian then blurts out her feelings, saying that she'll be very happy to hold their children's hands. She immediately realizes what she said, blushes, and flees in embarrassment. Shin finally understands that Sizzilian indeed feels the same way about him and decides to take action, something he should have done a long time ago. He goes after her, and when they are finally alone, both are very embarrassed. Shin starts a conversation about how they met, and she vividly remembers the moment when she met her love, saying he has always been there to help her. Shin seizes the opportunity and confesses that he found her beautiful from the very beginning, and she, blushing, admits that she felt the same way about him. After this, Shin gets straight to the point and declares his feelings. The two of them then open up and say they love each other. Sicilian starts crying emotionally because she had thought all this time that Shin didn't feel the same way about her, as he was kind to everyone and didn't show any feelings for her. But in reality, the guy was just slow. However, now he was determined not to waste any more time and asks Sicilian to be his girlfriend. With the romantic atmosphere, they start thinking about officially starting their relationship with a kiss, but unfortunately, they are interrupted because everyone in the group wanted to see the couple finally making it official after so long. Even the guy's grandparents were there spying on them. As they were all very curious, Shin confesses that they are dating and everyone celebrates. But August says that even though he's happy for them, they still need to focus on their training. Shin then asks why his cousin insisted on him confessing at this very moment when they couldn't afford distractions, and August responds that in his opinion, waiting to speak after the war would make him doomed not to survive. The next day, Shin continues training the group, but in a much more fun way. At the beach, he asks everyone to play volleyball using their magic to move a special ball. And so the study group plays volleyball using various magical techniques, becoming so excited about this new training method that they almost hit the ball at Ellie and May, who were calmly watching the game while enjoying the beach. At night, they all start chatting and Shin is surprised that they already know Ellie, as he didn't even know his cousin had a fiancé. So his friends explain that royalty and nobility have a tradition of hosting a party when they turn 5 years old, which is how they all met at that age. Shin realizes how different he is from them since at that age he was hunting animals in the forest. They also recall that at the party, many girls were surrounding August because they all wanted to impress the prince. August mentions how tiresome it was and how Ellie was the only one who had a different attitude, showing no interest and even rejecting him. August continues to say that ever since then, he has liked her, making Ellie blush, and Maria starts complaining that everyone has found their partner except her, making the whole group laugh. But this causes Melita to hear the commotion in the room, and since it was past their bedtime, everyone quickly hides under the covers to avoid getting caught. The plan would have worked, but Sicilian feels awkward being so close to her beloved and makes noise. As a result, Melita discovers the couple and scolds Shin for thinking they were doing inappropriate things. However, this makes the rest of the group make noise too, revealing that they were all hiding, and of course, Melita scolds the entire group and sends them to bed. The next day, the two lovebirds were still quite nervous in each other's presence, but even before having breakfast, Sicilian asks Shin to seek permission from her parents for them to date. They then talk to her parents, and Shin asks for permission, feeling super tense while waiting for the response. However, contrary to what he imagined, Sicilian's father is extremely happy that someone like Shin has chosen his daughter. Sicilian's mother explains that since they are from a noble family of viscounts, it is not appropriate for Sicilian to date without being engaged. She feels embarrassed by her mother's request, but Shin shows that he is willing to accept the condition and become engaged to the girl he loves, which makes Sicilian very happy. Back at the camp, the group continues their training, leaving Ellie amazed at the magical skills they display. Merlin suggests that she and May should train with them, but Ellie says she has no aptitude for magic, unlike May, who is excited to try it and discovers that she has great potential to become a mage in the future. This inspires Lynn to put in more effort, as she doesn't want to fall behind, but she ends up overexerting her magic, which is quite common. However, after she and Alice discuss how May will overshadow them as she grows up, they become jealous, causing poor May to seek protection behind Shin, making her brother quite jealous for not being chosen. However, he soon confesses that he was just teasing his little sister. Meanwhile, in the imperial capital, Strum asks his servant Muria for an update on the current situation. She reports that their attacks on the caravans have led to food shortages in the empire's cities. Strum decides that this is the right time for him to take his next step. Back at the camp, Shin trains new magic once again. As always, the group decides to protect themselves from a safe distance and uses protective barriers as a preventive measure, although Shin thinks it's all a bit excessive. But after he explains that he won't be training attack magic, everyone drops their protective barriers, although they remain quite apprehensive. However, all Shin does is make a rock float, leaving everyone incredulous at what they're seeing, as they've never seen anything like it before. Shin explains that he simply gave the rock anti-gravity, but as usual, no one understands his explanation even though they find the magic incredible. However, Shin surprises everyone once again by using wind magic to lift himself off the ground and move as if he were flying like a bird. Everyone is left in awe of the new hero, Like he explains that Shrum could also fly, so he had to learn to be able to confront him. After the training, Shin finally informs his grandparents about the engagement, and the couple apologizes for not having informed them earlier. But Melita and Merlin reveal that they had expected it sooner or later, so they weren't so surprised, but they asked to talk to Sicilian's parents before making the news public. So, with everyone gathered, the two of them explain that Shin is adopted, as they had assumed that the reason for the approval of the engagement was because he was the grandson of national heroes, but he had no blood relation to them. Sicilian's father appears to be disappointed, and they think the Viscount would back out of the engagement, but he shows that he was only frustrated with them for thinking he had approved of the engagement for some title-related interest. In reality, he was happy because Shin values his daughter and thinks about her safety above all else. So both he and Sicilian's mother accepted the engagement solely because of who Shin is. Melita and Merlin are surprised and apologize for having thought otherwise, but Sicilian's parents understand. Sicilian herself makes it clear that she doesn't mind either, as she didn't even know he was their grandson when they met and she liked him for who he is. Shin thanks them for their trust and promises to meet their expectations and take care of Sicilian. He also takes the opportunity to express his gratitude to his grandparents for raising him with so much love, leaving them emotional. Back at the camp, Shin enchants the entire group's uniforms with his defensive magic, making them even more powerful. With the new clothing and protective gear, August realizes that this would be a different and more dangerous training. Shin explains that indeed it was time for them to do combat training by facing a catastrophic class demon. Everyone becomes quite apprehensive, but Shin reassures his friends, reminding them that they have come a long way and that they are wearing protective equipment to avoid getting hurt easily. However, due to the danger, Mei and Ellie would stay behind this time, but Mei insists on coming along. So Shin solves the problem by giving her long-distance communication equipment that transmits and receives sound magic. This way, little Mei would be able to follow the training from a distance and practice using magical equipment. However, her grandmother finds out that once again, Shin was using innovative magic that could attract trouble and scolds him, leaving the equipment behind. And so the group sets out in search of a catastrophic class demon and finds a lion that, although powerful, is not as agile as a tiger. Because of this, Shin instructs only those with support roles to attack, and they end up overdoing it, easily defeating the creature without leaving a trace. Shin proves his friend's capabilities, saying that if the support mages could handle it, those specialized in attack magic could defeat a catastrophic class demon on their own. Each of the specialists then faces a creature without receiving any help, and they all succeed. Later, Shin and Sicilian hold their engagement party, and the boy is completely smitten with the beauty of his fiancée. With both of them deeply in love, the king officially recognizes their engagement and everyone toasts to the couple's happiness. However, since Shin had not officially proposed to Sicilian, he does it after the engagement party, better late than never. She obviously accepts the proposal, receiving her engagement ring with great joy, and the couple finally gets to share a kiss without any interruptions. The camp's training continues, and the group practices flying thanks to Shin's new gravity-defying magic. His friends thoroughly enjoy flying, but Shin, using a communicator similar to a loudspeaker, informs everyone that it's time to stop. August thinks that the device would be perfect for his upcoming coronation. Meanwhile, in the Imperial Castle, Zest and Miria inform Strum that the last city of the Empire has fallen. His plan to attack caravans on the roads has led to food shortages, and as the nobility continued to luxuriate, hungry commoners began to feel the urge to rebel. Through this desire, Strum managed to demonize everyone, leading them to seek vengeance against the nobles, ultimately destroying the cities one by one until they took over the entire empire. Miria knew that her master, Shtrum, despised the nobility, but she wondered why he had gone so far, given that his actions were affecting the commoners as well. Then, Shtrum announces to the Demonoids in his imperial throne room that thanks to everyone's efforts, they have finally brought the empire to ruin. His people celebrate, but upon realizing that Shtrum doesn't know what to do next, they suggest they continue to topple other kingdoms until they dominate the world. After all, there's no reason to settle for just the empire. However, Shtrum had already achieved his goal and didn't want more work. He releases those who have had different ambitions than his, causing most Demonoids to leave. But he doesn't care because all that matters to him is bringing down the empire. Miria then asks why Shtrum was so determined to destroy the empire, despite knowing that he had once been in line to become the emperor. Shtrum begins to recount his story to her and Zest. It all began 2 years ago when he was a lord who, unlike other nobles, treated commoners well. Thanks to this, he attracted many commoners from outside his lands, and with many laborers, his cultivated area expanded significantly. One of his men asked why he treated commoners so kindly, and Shtrum explained that when he was younger, on one of his journeys to the realm of King Dis, he was shocked to see that there were no slaves there, and even the commoners lived comfortably. Thus, comparing their lives to those in the Empire, he realized they needed to change their ways. Additionally, we see that Stritram had a happy life with his beautiful wife who was expecting a child. However, the other nobles hated Strum because his commoners left their lands to live in his domain. So Harold, who would become the Emperor of Blusvia, convinced everyone to set a trap for Strum, preventing him from becoming emperor, as they knew that if he did, he would benefit the commoners, an idea that clearly everyone abhorred. Harold asked the nobles to keep Strum in the capital as long as possible to give him time to orchestrate his downfall. To lure him into the trap, they pretended to be interested in hearing his ideas. Unfortunately, as soon as Strum received the letter from the nobles, he fell right into the plan, eager to attend the meeting in the capital, despite his wife's warning that the nobles' desire to see her husband was strange given their dislike for him. But he ignored her because he was one of the Empire's most skilled mages, even having been a demon hunter in his youth, so he knew how to defend himself and had nothing to worry about. So Strum left for the capital, leaving his wife at home. However, as soon as he left, women and children began to disappear from his lands, causing great concern. It got worse when a fake military policeman from the capital appeared, claiming there was a kidnapper in the area who was selling commoners as slaves. All commoners became afraid of the mysterious kidnapper, and they began to question why a lord like Strum would treat them so kindly, making Harold's plan a success. However, the nobles couldn't keep Stritram in the capital for as long as they had hoped because his wife was about to give birth, so Harold decided to execute his plan ahead of schedule. He sent the fake policeman to inform the commoners that they had found a trail of the kidnapper and needed their help to catch the criminal. Thus, with a charade, the policeman presented an inspection order to the man driving Strim's carriage, allowing him to inspect what was being transported and catch the women who had disappeared in the act, leaving no doubt in the minds of the commoners that Strim was responsible for the kidnappings. As a result, fear gripped the commoners, as they knew that because Strim was a noble, the police would take a long time to take action. This led them to decide to take matters into their own hands and attack his house. So when Strum finally returned home after a long absence, he found his mansion in flames. Strum tells Miria and Zest that he tried to save his wife, but it was too late. The mob had already destroyed everything, believing they had avenged the commoner's kidnapper. Devastated, Strum discovered what had happened and asked the people why a policeman would take civilians along during an investigation, and why he would be so foolish as to transport kidnapped people in a carriage bearing his coat of arms. This made them realize that they had been deceived. However, despite Strum realizing that he had fallen into a trap set by the nobles, especially Harold, the man who benefited most from his tragedy, he couldn't forgive the commoners for taking his beloved wife. Thus, consumed by hatred, he turned into a Demonoid and swore to avenge all the nobles and commoners of the Empire, a desire he finally fulfilled after 2 years. After hearing his master's story, Zest decides to help him create a new life goal. For this, he asks another Demonoid named Lawrence to join the others who left Strum and convince them to attack the Kingdom of Swede, a small land bordering King Dis's Earlshide Kingdom. All of this is a test to gauge Shin's strength, as he is a perfect new target for Strum. Back in the Earlshide Kingdom, the day of Prince August's coronation finally arrives, officially making him the future heir to the throne. He vows to dedicate his life to his nation and people. Everything goes well until a messenger arrives to inform them that the neighboring Kingdom of Swede is under attack by numerous Demonoids. The people become worried because it's only a matter of time before the situation spirals out of control and the Demonoids reach them. However, August reassures them, saying they are well prepared for this situation as they have a group ready to face the threat. August then introduces Shin, Merlin and Lolita's grandson, and their new hero, who has already defeated a Demonoid. He explains that Shin has been training a group to work together to defeat all the Demonoids that appear. He asks Shin to give a motivational speech and name their group, as calling them a study group might not have the right impact. Caught off guard, Shin improvises a speech and a name for their team, declaring that he guarantees that they, the Supreme Mages, have the strength needed to defeat the Demonoids. This energizes the population, but surprises his friends with the improvised name for the group, while August enjoys having put his cousin in this situation, although some seem to approve of the chosen name. And so, the Supreme Mages set off for the Kingdom of Swede to confront the Demonoids. Some time ago, we see the kingdom's watchful soldiers spotting a red signal from the border. They analyze the situation through a telescope and discover they are about to be attacked by 100 Demonoids. With everyone desperate, the leader sends one of them to seek help in the Earlshide Kingdom, but fears for their lives, as the message would take days to be delivered and even more for reinforcements to arrive. But with nowhere to escape, he orders all the soldiers to activate their magical artifacts to defend the wall at all costs. Luckily, as soon as the message was delivered, Shin's group travels to the kingdom much faster by flying than if they had used a carriage. So they engage in casual conversation along the way about their new group's name and the couples within the group, making Maria irritated that she doesn't have anyone. She wishes to take out her frustration on the Demonoids when they spot the kingdom of Swede. Upon arrival, Shin immediately protects a mother and her child from two attacking Demonoids. One of them mocks Shin for thinking a mere human could defeat them, but as soon as they witness Shin's magic, their attitude changes and they become terrified. After defeating them both and ensuring the woman and her daughter are safe, they continue onward. August then announces to the entire kingdom that he, the Prince of Earlshide, along with his group of mages, is there with the hero Shin to protect everyone and defeat the Demonoids. The people rejoice. The supreme mages then get to work, and Shin asks Sicilian to take care of the wounded as she excels in healing magic. They bid farewell, urging each other to stay safe, while Lawrence watches from afar, eager to witness the hero's power. Meanwhile, the group begins to confront the Demonoids in pairs, with Alice and Lynn locating one of them. The Demonoid taunts them for being mere little girls, irritating Alice. However, Lynn calms her friend down with a water jet to prevent her from getting careless. Alice agrees and says she will focus so they can defeat the Demonoid, but Lynn has already accomplished that with a single strike, without Alice even noticing. Alice feels a bit uneasy about the situation, considering that the Demonoid had been a human not too long ago. However, Lynn reminds her that they are now demons who, despite being conscious, are killing for fun, making them even worse than demonized animals. At that moment, they hear another Demonoid nearby enjoying the suffering of one of the kingdom's soldiers. But just as he's about to attack the poor soldier, Alice and Lynn appear, protecting him with their magical barriers. With Alice realizing that Lynn was right, she fries the Demonoid, releasing all her anger, and then they help the wounded soldier. However, he insists that he's fine to walk to the aid station and lets them continue their work. So the two of them make a bet on who can defeat more Demonoids. Meanwhile, one of the demons approaches the soldiers with magical artifacts, making him wish he had one too. Back with a group of mages, August escorts face off against two Demonoids, trying to extract valuable information from them about whether Shrim was behind the attack. However, since they can't get anything, they finish off the Demonoids. Meanwhile, the others in the team were also doing a great job protecting people and defeating the Demonoids. Some of them even decided to attack the aid station, thinking it would be easy because it was full of vulnerable people. However, Mark and Olivia were on guard, and despite their fear, they mustered the strength to protect each other. Meanwhile, Sicilian was inside, fighting to heal as many people as possible. Her beloved Shin, on the other hand, was relentlessly eliminating Demonoids as expected. Of course, this terrifies Lawrence, as he never imagined a human could have such power, although he should have known since Shin had defeated his master. Nearby, we see that August has teamed up with Maria, and they are doing well. But they encounter the Demonoid who obtained the magical artifact. He recognizes August's voice and thinks that defeating the prince would make his group surrender. However, August explains that he's not the leader of their group, and realizing the Demonoid's importance, he decides to defeat him himself to force the others to surrender. However, it's Maria who delivers a surprise attack, which doesn't yield results. So the Demonoid strikes her and then throws her away. While these were potentially fatal attacks, thanks to her protective uniform, she only comes out with a scratch on her face. However, the demon understands what happened and decides to attack the unprotected parts of her uniform. To prevent any openings, Maria launches multiple consecutive attacks, but to her surprise, he remains unharmed thanks to the magical artifact, which can project a magical barrier. The duo then understands what they need to do with just a glance and begins casting continuous spells, making the Demonoid question the safety of relying on the magical artifact. However, he doesn't know that by getting distracted, he would make the barrier disappear and take a hit from Maria, who taunts him and distracts him while August delivers the final blow, demonstrating perfect teamwork. Meanwhile, Swede's king celebrates that the battle seems to be finally coming to an end. Melita and Merlin are with him to ensure his safety and celebrate the group's excellent work. At the same time, Lawrence begins to fear for his life, realizing that the problem isn't just Shin, but all of his friends. He communicates with Zest, who acknowledges that he made a mistake in underestimating the hero's power, despite considering the other Demonoids disposable. He still finds it regrettable to lose so many of them. As Lawrence can't be solely responsible for their retreat, he orders Miria to assist, and she enters the fray, attacking with all her might. Meanwhile, Shroom arrives at the scene, lamenting that he's missing out on the fun. Simultaneously, while Sicilian continues to exert herself to heal as many people as possible, encountering a challenging case of a severely injured man, Myriad is injuring several other soldiers, showing that she is on a completely different level from the other Demonoids. Even Shin senses that there is a significantly different energy in the area. But before she can harm more people, Alice and Lynn appear, saving the soldiers and introducing themselves as the Super Mages. The two of them battle Miria, But in a moment of distraction, she manages to hit Alice, who survives thanks to her protective uniform. However, Miria decides to use the poor girl as a hostage, finding amusement in the situation. Nearby, Lawrence senses Miria's presence and understands that reinforcements have arrived. So he orders all the Demonoids to retreat, but they don't listen because they still want to cause more destruction. However, they quickly change their minds upon seeing Shin approaching with all his power. Everyone starts regrouping to flee across the rooftops. Shin then takes flight, attacking multiple Demonoids at once, but he has to be careful not to hit the soldiers, allowing some of them to escape. He considers going after them, but spots the location where his friends are fighting Miria in a complete disadvantage. She moves Tomini and then Lin and Alice, but before she can harm another member of their group, Shin arrives to save the day. With all his friends injured, Shin prepares to face Miria, who intends to test whether the hero is as good as he's made out to be, as that was the objective of their attack. So they start fighting, but with the first cut that Miria receives, she realizes it's not safe to continue. And just then, the rest of the Supreme Mages appear, intending to help but inadvertently providing an opening for Miria to escape. Lawrence takes advantage of the moment when they were all surrounded and asks Miria to use her explosive magic. Shin sees that they are about to suffer a major attack, and after assessing how weak his friends are, he yells for August to help protect everyone. Fortunately, the hero manages to shield his group, and although the Demonoids manage to escape, everyone comes out unharmed. August wonders what the reason for the attack was since they didn't see Shtrum. Shin can't answer, but he recognizes that if Shtrum had been there, the damage would have been much worse. Meanwhile, Shtrum observes his people retreating, utterly defeated. However, Zest's plan works because Shtrum realizes that he was bored without a purpose and that Shin could be a good challenge. Then the group goes to the aid station to check on Sicilian and finds Mark and Olivia helping some people. August asks everyone in the group to assist with healing magic, while Shin goes to see his beloved, who is frustrated and exhausted from her efforts to save a severely injured man, with his worried wife by his side. After struggling to heal him, Sicilian believes that magic cannot solve everything and laments her inability to help. However, she remembers that her uniform has self-healing magic and begins to take it off to give it to the man. Shin arrives in time to explain that the uniform won't help. Sicilian and the man's wife begin to cry, thinking that there's no solution. However, Shin promises to find a way and starts healing the man, focusing on each part of his body one at a time instead of trying to heal everything at once. He quickly heals him, impressing everyone. Sicilian begins to lament that she's not as useful as him, feeling like she failed in her mission. Then Shin explains that he was only able to save the man's life because she kept him alive during the battle and reminds her of the many people she did save on her own, with everyone being very grateful for everything she did. After saving the day, the King of Swede thanks the group of mages for all they've done. August takes the opportunity to say that although they don't understand the reason for the attack, Shtrum, the leader of the Demonoids, wasn't present. Therefore, he deduces that Shtrum may have sent the Demonoids only as a distraction to lure Shin, as Shtrum knew he was a threat. August even considers that Shtrum may have wanted the troublesome Demonoids eliminated. However, in any case, the problem is far from over, and they could attack again at any moment. So August suggests holding meetings with various allied nations to confront the problem together and asks the King of Swede if he would like to join them. The king, realizing that it's too big a burden for a single kingdom, agrees to discuss the matter and says that he is waiting for August to gather other nations to join the alliance. After speaking with the king, they were ready to leave the kingdom of Swede, and Shin thinks that if he had used his portal to bring everyone there, they would have had fewer problems and fewer injured people. However, since he can only open portals to places he's been before, he plans to accompany August on his journey to allied nations, and his cousin agrees, deciding that together they will protect the world. Once they return home to the kingdom of Earlshide, the Supreme Mages are welcomed with fireworks and hugs. Then, August speaks with his father to explain his plan to seek allies from other nations and ask for permission to be the negotiator since he's the prince and a member of the Supreme Mages. Dis accepts his request, and Shin's grandparents understand that he has to go too, along with the entire group of mages. So Ellie and May ask to accompany the group once more. August is concerned for their safety, but his escorts promise to protect them, and it's decided that they will all embark on the new adventure together. Meanwhile, in the Imperial Castle, Shtrum sends a "I told you so" message to the three Demonoids who caused the commotion with Shin, despite all the warnings. Zest apologizes for acting without permission and wonders if he should really be happy that his master has found such a dangerous new challenge. However, this isn't Shtrum's only goal, as it seems he was conducting experiments again, this time with Miria, to find a way for their species to reproduce. Back in the kingdom of Earlshide, the Supreme Mages bid farewell to the king and Shin's grandparents and embark on the long journey to seek allies from other nations to save the world. At night, Merlin and Melita contemplate how lonely it will be with just the two of them when suddenly Shin's portal opens, and the house begins to fill with people. Since they are a large group, Shin explains to his grandparents that to save on hotel costs, they will return home through the portal every night. In other words, the poor grandparents won't have a peaceful night thanks to the young supreme mages.